On Father's Day morning, my daughter sent me a box that nearly destroyed what was left of our family. My wife looked at it and screamed, "Don't open it, Bob. Can't you see the holes?" 10 minutes later, the police were in my living room, and I was staring at something I never imagined my own child would send me. Let me back up a minute. I'm Bob Harrison, 66 years old. Retired mechanical engineer from Springfield. Worked 43 years at the same company. My wife Maggie and we've been married 38 years. We raised one daughter, Jennifer. We gave her everything. Private school, college education, a beautiful wedding that cost us $32,000. We thought we did everything right. That Sunday morning started peaceful. Enough. I was on the front porch with my coffee and the Springfield Gazette, watching the Hendersons load up their minivan for a family picnic. Normal Father's Day stuff. Maggie was inside making her famous blueberry pancakes. The smell was drifting through the screen door. Then a brown UPS truck pulled up. Sunday delivery. That should have been my first warning. The driver hopped out with a box. About the size of a shoebox, maybe 2 pounds. "Happy Father's Day," he said. "Someone must think highly of you to pay for weekend delivery." I signed for it and carried it inside. No return address. Just generic shipping labels. Maggie came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Who's that from?" she asked. I shrugged. "Maybe the grandkids." But when I set it on the coffee table, Maggie leaned in close. Then her face went white. "William," she whispered. We'd been married long enough that I knew that tone. Something was very wrong. "Don't open it." She pointed at the cardboard. With a shaking finger. "Can't you see? There are holes punched in the sides. Breathing holes. Something alive is in there." My stomach dropped. She was right. Tiny punctures, barely visible unless you knew to look. And then we heard it. A soft hissing sound from inside the box. Maggie grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. "I'm calling 911, I said. My hands were shaking so bad. I could barely hold the phone. The dispatcher told us to back away and wait. Those were the longest 10 minutes of my life. We stood in our own living room, staring at that innocent-looking package. Like it was a bomb. The hissing came again. Louder this time. When Officer Reeves and the animal control specialist finally arrived, Mike Johnson opened that box with long metal tongs. He reached in carefully and pulled out a corn snake. 3 feet long. "Non-venomous," he said, "but someone paid good money for this one." I felt my blood turn to ice. Because I knew. I knew exactly who would do something like this. There was only one person angry enough, desperate enough, cruel enough to send her own father a snake on Father's Day. My daughter Jennifer. But to understand why she would do this, I need to take you back 6 days to the worst argument we'd ever had. 6 days before that snake arrived, my daughter Jennifer sat in my living room and told me she needed $50,000. Not asked. Told me. Like I owed it to her. It was Tuesday evening. Around 7 o'clock. Maggie and I had just finished dinner when Jen's BMW pulled into our driveway. That car, by the way, we co-signed the loan 3 years ago when her credit was shot. We're still making half the payments. She brought her husband Derek with her. 37 years old and hasn't held a steady job in 5 years. Calls himself a freelance mechanic. But mostly he sits on our couch and drinks our beer while Jennifer works part-time at a nail salon. "Dad," Jen said, not even bothering with small talk. "Derek and I need to talk to you about something important." She had that look on her face. The same one she'd worn a dozen times before when she needed money. My retirement portfolio sat on the desk in my office. $680,000. 43 years of 12-hour shifts, missed vacations, and brown bag lunches. Every penny saved for Maggie and me to live with dignity in our final years. We're in trouble. Jen continued. Real trouble this time. We owe $32,000 to the Riverside Casino and another $18,000 on credit cards. If we don't pay by Friday, they're threatening legal action. Maggie's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Jennifer, how did you accumulate $50,000 in debt? My daughter's face flushed red. Does it matter? The point is we need help. You're sitting on hundreds of thousands while Derek and I are drowning. I worked 43 years for that money, I said quietly. That's not spending money, Jennifer. That's our retirement. That's our security if one of us gets sick. That's not your emergency fund. Derek leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Come on, Bob. You can't take it with you, right? What's 50 grand when you've got over $500,000 just sitting there? You're 66 years old. Live a little. Help your family. The disrespect tasted bitter in my mouth. This man had never contributed a dime to our household, yet he felt entitled to lecture me about my own money. Jennifer, I said, ignoring Derek entirely. This is the 4th time in 3 years you've come to us with gambling debts. Last time. You promised it was the last time. I sold my 1967 Mustang to pay off $45,000 for you. That car was my dream since I was 20 years old. Her eyes narrowed. So you're throwing that in my face now? That's real nice, Dad. Real loving. Maggie spoke up from the doorway. Sweetheart, we've helped you so many times. But this has to stop. You need professional help for the gambling, not more money to keep feeding it. Jennifer stood up so fast her purse fell off the couch. Professional help. She grabbed her coffee mug from the end table and hurled it at the floor. The ceramic shattered. Brown liquid splashed across our Persian rug, the one we bought for our 20th anniversary. You want to know what I need? I need parents who actually care about their daughter instead of hoarding money like dragons. That's when Derek stood up too, and his whole demeanor changed. He took a step toward me. You know what, old man? You're 66. Accidents happen at that age. Falls, heart attacks, all kinds of unfortunate things. Maybe you should think about that before you turn your back on family. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Maggie gasped. I stood slowly, my joints protesting, but my resolve hardening. Get out of my house. Both of you. Now. Jennifer's face twisted with rage. Fine. But don't expect to see Lily and Mason anymore. Those are your grandchildren, Dad. Remember them? 8 and 6 years old. Say goodbye, because you just chose money over family. She stormed toward the door, Derek following. But at the threshold, she turned back. Her smile was cold. You'll regret this, Dad. Happy early Father's Day. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. And that's when I noticed it. Our family photo on the mantel. The silver frame was face down. Had it fallen during Jennifer's tantrum? Or had she flipped it deliberately? Maggie walked over and picked it up. The glass wasn't cracked, but something about seeing our smiling faces from 10 years ago, before everything turned toxic, made my chest ache. I didn't know then that Jennifer had already planned her revenge. That she'd already bought the snake. That in 6 days, I'd be standing in this same room with police officers, staring at the consequences of raising a daughter who saw her father as nothing more than a bank account. For 6 days after that fight, I didn't hear a word from Jennifer. Not a phone call. Not a text message. Nothing. And that should have terrified me, because in 3 years of financial crises, she'd never gone more than 48 hours without contact. Father's Day morning arrived quiet and peaceful. Too quiet. I sat on our front porch with the Springfield Gazette and a cup of coffee, watching our neighborhood wake up. The Hendersons were packing their minivan. Mrs. Patterson was walking her terrier. Normal families doing normal things on a Sunday morning. Maggie came out and sat beside me. Her hands were wrapped around her own coffee mug, but she wasn't drinking. "Bob," she said softly. "Have you noticed we haven't heard from Jennifer all week?" I had noticed. Part of me felt relieved. The other part felt uneasy. "It's nice, isn't it? The peace and quiet." She shook her head. "It's too quiet. Jennifer doesn't do quiet. When she's angry, she makes noise. When she goes silent, she's planning something." I wanted to tell her she was being paranoid. But Maggie had known Jennifer longer than anyone. A mother's instinct was usually right. Before I could respond, the brown UPS truck appeared at the end of our street. It slowed in front of our house. My heart did a strange little skip. "Sunday delivery?" Maggie said. "Who pays extra for that?" The driver walked up our driveway with a medium-sized box. I stood up, thinking maybe Lily and Mason had convinced their mother to let them send their grandpa a card. Kids that age still believed in making up, in forgiveness, in family. I signed for the package and brought it inside to the coffee table. The same table where Jennifer had her meltdown 6 days ago. The coffee stain was still visible on our Persian rug despite Maggie's best efforts to clean it. "Let me get my reading glasses," I said, reaching for the box. But Maggie grabbed my wrist hard. "Bob, wait. Look at it first." "What?" "It's just a box from the kids. Look closer." She pointed at the cardboard. Her finger was trembling. "See those tiny holes? Someone punched air holes in the sides." My stomach went cold. I leaned in. She was right. Small, deliberate punctures. Breathing holes. "Maggie, what would need breathing holes?" Before she could answer, we both heard it. A soft rustling from inside the box. Then a sound that made the hair on my neck stand up. A quiet hiss. Maggie stumbled backward, her hand over her mouth. "Oh my God. Bob, don't touch it. Call someone. Call 911 right now." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. Through our front window, I could see Mr. Henderson walking past with his dog. He waved. "Everything okay, Bob?" he called out. I tried to wave back normally, but my whole arm was shaking. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. "We have a package," I said. "Something alive is inside. It's hissing. I think it might be a snake." "Sir, do not open the package. Move away from it and wait for officers to arrive." Maggie and I backed up to the far side of the living room. We stood there, in our own home, afraid of a cardboard box sitting on our coffee table. The hissing came again. Longer this time. More agitated. "Who would send us a snake?" Maggie whispered. But even as she asked, we both knew. There was only one person angry enough. One person who knew exactly how to hurt us. One person who'd smiled coldly and said Happy Early Fathers Day 6 days ago. When Officer Reeves arrived with Mike Johnson from Animal Control, I watched from across the room as Mike carefully opened that box with long metal tongs. He reached inside. And when he lifted out that 3-foot corn snake, my blood ran cold. Because I knew exactly who sent it. And I was about to find the proof. After the police left and the snake was safely removed, I went straight to my home office. Maggie followed me. She knew what I was thinking. "Bob, what are you looking for?" "Proof," I said. "Logging into our bank account. Jennifer has been an authorized user on my Visa card since college. Emergency use only, or so I thought." I pulled up the last 3 months of statements. Gas stations. Grocery stores, nail salon supplies. Nothing unusual until I reached 3 weeks ago. Right there, dated 5 days after our argument. Exotic Reptile Palace. $127.50. Maggie leaned over my shoulder and gasped. "She bought the snake with your own credit card?" My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From anger. Cold, clear anger. She planned this. 3 weeks ago. She bought that snake and waited. Chose Father's Day specifically to send it. "Check her search history," Maggie said suddenly. "She uses our old iPad sometimes when she visits. It's still linked to the family iCloud account." I opened the cloud on my computer. Sure enough, Jennifer's search history from 3 weeks ago popped up. Harmless snakes for beginners. How to scare someone without getting caught. Legal consequences of mailing live animals. Revenge tactics that can't be traced. There it was. Digital evidence of premeditated psychological warfare. Against her own father. But I needed to hear it from her. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jennifer's number. Maggie put her hand on my arm. "Bob, what are you going to say?" "I'm going to give her a chance to tell the truth." The phone rang twice. "Dad?" Jennifer's voice was artificially bright. Fake cheerful. "How's your Father's Day going?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Interesting morning. Actually. I received a very unusual gift." "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" "Know anything about what?" Her response came too quickly. Too rehearsed. "What happened?" "Someone sent me a package. Had to call the police and animal control. Found a corn snake inside. Strange coincidence, don't you think?" "A snake? Oh my God, Dad, that's terrible. Who would do something like that?" But then I heard it. In the background. Crystal clear. Derek's laughter. Not the surprised kind. The satisfied kind. The sound of someone who thought they'd pulled off something clever. That laugh told me everything I needed to know. My daughter had sent me a snake. Her husband found it hilarious. And they both thought they'd gotten away with it. "Jennifer," I said slowly. "I have the credit card statement right in front of me. Exotic Reptile Palace. $127.50. Your authorized card. 3 weeks ago." Silence. The artificial brightness in her voice evaporated. "You went through my purchases." "They're my purchases, Jennifer. My card. My money. You just committed fraud." Her voice turned icy. "Prove it was me. Prove I sent you anything. Maybe someone stole my card information. I've also got your search history. Harmless snakes. Scare tactics. All searched the same day you bought that snake." More silence. Then she laughed. That cold, bitter laugh that didn't sound anything like the little girl who used to draw me Father's Day cards. "You're paranoid, old man. Absolutely delusional." "I'm also done," I said. "Done being your bank account. Done being manipulated. Done enabling your cruelty. Expect some changes, Jennifer. Starting immediately." I hung up before she could respond. Maggie was staring at me with wide eyes. What kind of changes? I turned back to my computer. The kind that should have happened years ago. That Sunday evening at 7 o'clock, I sat down at my home office computer and did something I should have done years ago. I logged into our bank account and started dismantling the financial safety net that had enabled Jennifer's irresponsibility for 3 solid years. Maggie pulled up a chair beside me. She'd printed out something. A spreadsheet. Bob, before you do this, I want you to see what I've been tracking. She slid the paper in front of me. 3 columns. Dates, amounts, reasons. Emergency car repair, $8,000. Medical bills, $12,000. Rent assistance. $2,400 monthly for 18 months. Casino debt payoff last year, $45,000. The total at the bottom made my chest tight. $284,000. In 3 years, we'd given Jennifer nearly $300,000. More than we spent on her entire childhood and college combined. I stared at that number. That was a new RV. That was 5 years of comfortable retirement travel. That was Maggie's security if I died first. All of it poured into a bottomless pit of gambling debts and manufactured emergencies. My hand moved to the mouse. First, I removed Jennifer as an authorized user on the credit card. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes," I clicked. User access revoked effective immediately. Next. The automatic payments. $2,400 transferred to Jennifer's checking account on the 1st of every month. Her rent. I'd been paying her rent for 18 months straight. Cancel recurring payment. Confirm. Bob, Maggie said softly. Are you absolutely sure about this? I looked at my wife. 38 years she'd stood beside me. Worked night shifts as a nurse so I could finish my engineering degree. Never complained when I worked overtime. Never asked for fancy things. And I'd been hemorrhaging our retirement savings to fund our daughter's casino habit. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. I changed my ATM PIN from 1958 to 1986. The year Maggie and I got married. Jennifer had somehow learned my old PIN. Probably watching over my shoulder during one of her emergencies. Then I canceled the car insurance policy I'd been paying for Jennifer's BMW. $340 a month. Gone. She could figure out her own insurance. The last thing I did was remove the direct deposit backup. Jennifer had convinced me 2 years ago to link our accounts so if she ever had a real emergency, funds could transfer instantly. I deleted that link. My office felt very quiet. On my desk sat a framed photo of Jennifer at 5 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair. Gap-toothed smile. Sticky cotton candy fingers in my hair. Pure joy on her face. I picked up that photo. Looked at that little girl. For a moment, my hand hovered over the undo button. She was my daughter. My only child. What kind of father does this? Maggie's hand covered mine. The kind who finally understands that love sometimes means letting people face their own consequences. I clicked save. Account changes processed. Updates will be available immediately. Monday morning at 8:15, my phone rang. Jennifer's name on the caller ID. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I needed to be calm. In control. Dad, what the hell have you done? Her voice was pure panic. My card was declined at the grocery store. The rent payment bounced. My bank says the automatic transfer was cancelled. What is happening? Jennifer, I said quietly. I know you sent me that snake. I responded appropriately. You can't prove anything. Her voice shifted from panic to defensive fury. This is insane. You can't just cut me off without warning. Exotic Reptile Palace, I said. $127.50. Charge to the authorized card I gave you. For emergencies. 3 weeks ago. Your search history on the family iCloud. Harmless snakes. Scare tactics. Should I continue? The silence on the other end lasted exactly 5 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. Fine. You want to play this game? You will never see Lily and Mason again. Never. Those kids won't even remember what their grandfather looks like. I took a breath. The threat that used to bring me to my knees felt powerless now. That's your choice, Jennifer. But my financial support is no longer your right. You'll regret this, she hissed. We're coming over. Derek and I are coming over right now, and you're going to fix this. The line went dead. I looked at Maggie. She's on her way. Maggie nodded. Her face was pale. But her jaw was set. Then I'm calling the police non-emergency line. They need to know there might be a disturbance. 30 minutes later, a silver BMW screeched into our driveway going way too fast. And Derek wasn't smiling anymore. Jennifer's BMW hadn't even fully stopped before both doors flew open. She stormed up our walkway with Derek right behind her. I watched from the living room window as she raised her fist to pound on the door. Maggie had already called the police non-emergency line. They said an officer could be here in 15 minutes if things escalated. I had a feeling 15 minutes might not be fast. Enough. Open this door, Derek shouted, hammering with both fists. We know you're in there, old man. Open up or I'll kick it down. I stayed calm. I'd already decided I wasn't opening that door. Not with Derek in that state. Bob, Maggie whispered, her phone in her hand. Should I call 911 now? Before I could answer, Derek stepped back and kicked our ceramic planter. It shattered across the porch. $40 worth of petunias scattered everywhere. Then he grabbed our mailbox and ripped it clean off the post. Call them now, I said. Maggie's fingers were shaking as she dialed. Through the window, I watched Jennifer scream at Derek to stop, but he wasn't listening anymore. He picked up a decorative garden stone, about 5 pounds of river rock weed. Bought at a craft fair. He's got a rock, I told Maggie. She was already talking to the dispatcher. My husband says he has a rock. Yes, he's destroying property. Please hurry. Derek drew his arm back. I pulled Maggie away from the window just as that stone came flying through. The garage window exploded inward. Glass rained down on my workbench where I'd been restoring an old radio just yesterday. Across the street, Mr. Henderson had his phone out. He was recording everything. Thank God for nosy neighbors. Sirens wailed in the distance. Derek heard them too. He froze. Jennifer grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back toward the car. But he shook her off and pointed at our front door. This isn't over, Harrison. You hear me? This isn't over. 2 Springfield police cruisers pulled up. Officers Johnson and Reeves, the same officer who'd handled the snake call. Derek, step away from the property, Officer Johnson commanded. Hands where I can see them. What followed was 10 minutes of Derek trying to explain that this was a family matter, that I'd stolen from his wife, that we were having a misunderstanding. Officer Johnson wasn't buying it. Sir. You destroyed a mailbox, a planter, and broke a window. That's not a misunderstanding. That's criminal mischief. They didn't arrest him, but they did write him a citation and took statements from me, Maggie, and Mr. Henderson, who eagerly shared his video footage. Jennifer stood by her car the whole time, arms crossed, glaring at me with pure hatred. Before they left, Officer Johnson pulled me aside. "Mr. Harrison, this is the second call we've had to your residence involving your daughter in a week. You might want to consider legal protection. A restraining order, maybe. Talk to a lawyer." That night, I barely slept. By Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, I was sitting in the law offices of Sarah Mitchell, attorney at law. I'd known Sarah for 15 years. She'd handled our wills, property transfers, and Maggie's mother's estate. "William," she said, gesturing to the leather chair across from her desk. "You sounded urgent on the phone. What's going on?" I told her everything. The inheritance argument. The snake delivery. The credit card fraud. Derek's destruction of our property. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me seriously. "Bob, this isn't just a family disagreement anymore. This is harassment, intimidation, and what we call financial elder abuse. We need to address this on multiple fronts." She outlined the plan. First, a restraining order against both Jennifer and Derek. 300 feet minimum distance. No contact by phone, email, text, or third parties. Violations would be criminal offenses. Second, we modify your will immediately. Your retirement assets, currently $680,000, would go into an educational trust for Lily and Mason. An independent trustee would manage the funds. Money could only be used for tuition, books, school supplies, and legitimate educational expenses. Jennifer and Derek would get zero access. Zero control. $0. "How long does this take?" I asked. "The will modifications can be finalized by Friday. The restraining order can be filed today. A judge will review it. And if approved, the sheriff's department will serve the papers, probably by Thursday." Sarah leaned forward. "Bob, I need you to understand something. When Jennifer receives these documents, her reaction will likely be significant. People who use manipulation and threats don't accept boundaries gracefully." "I understand," I said. "But I'm done being afraid of my own daughter." "Good," Sarah said. "Because it's time your daughter learned that actions have consequences." On Thursday afternoon at 2:15, a county sheriff's deputy knocked on Jennifer's apartment door. He handed her 2 manila envelopes. One contained a restraining order. The other contained notification of her complete removal from my will. I didn't feel victorious when Sarah called to confirm delivery. I felt something better. I felt free. 2 weeks after Jennifer was served those papers, something remarkable happened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it was the most peaceful 2 weeks I'd had in 3 years. No angry phone calls. No threatening texts. No surprise visits demanding money. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes when you finally set boundaries and mean it. Maggie and I fell back into the retirement weed. Planned 4. Morning coffee on the porch. Afternoon walks around the neighborhood. Evening dinners without checking our phones every 5 minutes. We even started talking about that RV trip to Yellowstone we'd postponed 4 times because of Jennifer's emergencies. Then on a Thursday afternoon, something came in the mail that made my chest tight. Not from Jennifer. From Springfield Elementary School. A hand-drawn card. Crayon flowers and stick figures. The words were in 8-year-old handwriting. "I miss you, Grandpa. Love, Lily." The teacher had included a note. "Lily asks about you often. She's invited you to her school play next month. We'd be happy to add you to the guest list if you'd like to attend. You can coordinate directly with the school." I showed it to Maggie. Her eyes filled with tears. The good kind. See? She said softly. Jennifer can't keep the kids from you. Not really. Not if we're smart about it. That same week, Sarah Mitchell called with an update. Thought you'd want to know. Derek Cole was arrested last night for driving under the influence. Blood alcohol level twice the legal limit. Jennifer posted bail. But her bank account is probably hurting right about now. I didn't feel happy about Derek's arrest. I felt something else. Validation. The chaos that had surrounded Jennifer and Derek for years wasn't my fault. It wasn't my responsibility to fix. It was the natural consequence of their choices. Here's what I learned from all this, and I hope you'll hear me clearly. Enabling someone you love isn't the same as helping them. For 30 years, I confused the two. Every time I wrote a check, every time I paid off another debt, every time I rescued Jennifer from her latest crisis, I thought I was being a good father. I was wrong. I was teaching her that choices don't have consequences. That manipulation works. That daddy's wallet would always be open no matter how badly she behaved. The snake was my wake-up call. It showed me that my daughter didn't see me as a father anymore. She saw me as an obstacle between her and my money. And when that obstacle wouldn't move, she tried to frighten me into submission. But here's the thing about boundaries. They're not cruel. They're necessary. They're how you protect yourself from people who've proven they'll hurt you to get what they want. Even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. Maggie and I set up a separate college fund for Lily and Mason. $500 a month goes in automatically. By the time they're 18, there'll be enough for 4 years at a state university. They'll get that education. But Jennifer and Derek will never touch a penny of it. I'm 66 years old. I don't know how many good years I have left. But I know this. I'm going to spend them in peace, not chaos. In boundaries, not manipulation. In security, not crisis. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you've got an adult child or a family member who treats you like a bank account instead of a human being, hear me now. You are not obligated to fund someone else's irresponsibility. You are not cruel for saying no, you are not selfish for protecting what you worked your whole life to build. Love doesn't mean letting people destroy you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let them face the consequences of their own choices. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss future stories. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe boundaries matter. And drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to cut off a family member for your own protection? How did you handle it? Your story might help someone else who's struggling with the same decision. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's being manipulated by family, share this video with them. Sometimes we need permission to protect ourselves. Consider this that permission. I'm Bob Harrison. And I finally chose peace over chaos. You can too.